We're in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 10. We're just about through this book. The book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes has a lot of wisdom and a lot of practical applications for believers and a lot of things that the wisest of men that God used to write the book of Ecclesiastes has to say about life in general. So, the very first verse, I hope you never forget this verse. The dead flies cause ointment to stinks. Good, expensive, sweet smelling ointment in verse 1 can stink with a few dead flies in it. And what God's trying to get across to us is it just takes a little bit of sin in our life to ruin our testimony and to ruin our influence. I'm going to talk about unconfessed sin because we all sin to some degree. We just don't go into sin and live in sin. But unconfessed sin and getting involved in certain sinful things can ruin your testimony. All right, in chapter 12 is where we left off. I talked about the serpent biting handlers when it's not in a trance. And I don't understand why anybody would want to put a cobra in a trance and handle it, but they do in the Middle East. And yet, if that cobra is not in a trance and you pick it up, it'll bite you. And that's all he's saying. Surely the serpent will bite without enchantment, without being hypnotized, because they are hypnotized by what these snake handlers do. And they can have that profession. Surely they would be something more rewarding than that, you would think. But that's what they do. And all God is trying to get across to us is a man that babbles is as dangerous as a poisonous snake. A man that does not speak any words of wisdom, he just speaks from the sinful desires of his heart. He is as dangerous as a cobra. Then he goes on to say that the beginning of the words of this fool is foolishness, and the end of his talk is mischievous madness. He's insane. But the words of wise brings favor from God, spoken from truth of the word of God. And no preacher ever wants to be worshiped. He wants people to worship the Lord. He does not ever, if he's the right kind of preacher, he doesn't ever want himself to be worshiped. But fools, they want to have self-worship. And they think because there are many words, people are going to worship them and hold them in esteem. But verse 14 says, a fool is also full of words. In other words, he fills the air with words, doesn't have any sense to it. And a man cannot tell what shall be, don't know what he's talking about, don't know what he talks about that's going to come after he's done talking. A fool's words, they lack reason. They don't have any reason. And they might know some Bible verses, but they still don't know the real meaning of those verses. And they never talk the things that are what people need to hear. They're always things that promote themselves. The labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them, because he knoweth not how to go to the city. One thing about a fool, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know how to give spiritual direction. He don't even know how to get home without a map. So it's just saying his words have no direction. They lack direction. They lack substance. The labor of the foolish wearies every one of them. When he talks, he just wears you out. He don't make any sense. His words are endless, but there's no sense to them. Woe to thee, O land, verse 16, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. Now, the application of this is that here are novices who are eating before they do any work. In the morning, it says. So they just keep eating, they don't do any work. So he's a novice. But it says, woe to the land because of him. He's lazy. He wants to eat all the time, and he starts out eating in the morning, then loafing the rest of the day. But the land is blessed, verse 17, when thy king is a son of nobles, thy princes eat in due season. In other words, he gets his work done, then he eats. He doesn't eat in the morning first thing like this novice. He eats when his work is done. And then what he does is he gives substance to those that follow his wisdom. And so the land is blessed. We have a man of maturity, a man that works, gets his work done, and then he eats. And then he goes on to say, he eats in due season, means his work is done when he eats. And for strength, he has strength and not drunkenness like the lazy. They eat and drink, they get drunk, and they never get any work done. I've been around people like that. Man, they worked harder getting out of work than what they actually did if they worked. And I told the guy that. I said, man, you actually spend more time trying to get out of work than you actually would do if you worked. I said, I don't understand you, man. You wear me out going all over the place, running here, running there, never getting anything done, always on the run, looking for this, looking for that. And I just told the boss, I said, I'd just rather work by myself. I really would. I was an electrician apprentice. And this guy, all he wanted to do was just keep looking and running for parts everywhere, never getting any work done. And so I said, I'd just rather work by myself rather than work with him. I'm not trying to give the guy a bad reputation or anything. He's already set a bad precedent for me because I just don't like, he wears me out, running around all over the place, not getting any work done. We got a certain amount of work needs to be done, but it seems like he doesn't do that. He said, yeah, I noticed that. But he said, if I fired him, the union would just get him back. And you know, that's the worst thing that ever happened to companies is when they got hog-tied with unions and they had to keep so many people on payroll and they couldn't fire them unless there was really, I mean, they almost had to commit murder to get fired. Same thing when I worked at Truck and Coach in Pontiac. Guys would sit around at Christmas time, New Year's, drinking. They wouldn't work. And other people doing their work. And I said to the foreman, why don't you just tell them guys going home? They're not working. No, they'll just union get them right back. We've done it before. Doesn't do any good. I said, well, then you need to have some kind of understanding with the company. We can't keep people on the payroll and the company make a profit. You're just holding down people that are not productive and it's costing you money. And I said, I don't understand how you think. Well, that's how people do, though. They think that way. He said, by much slothfulness, the building decayeth in verse 18, and through idleness of the hands, the house drops through. Now, because of laziness, buildings collapse. If you don't work on a roof when it starts to leak, eventually that roof will fall in. It'll cave in. I've patched several roofs for myself and others that began to develop little slow leaks. Now, if you catch them in time, then you don't have to worry about replacing the whole roof. I had a widow woman that told me, she said, you know anybody can work on roofs? I said, well, I used to do that as a sideline. I said, I'm pastoring now, but I said, if you wait till my day off, I'll come over and look at your roof. She said, well, I paid a guy $600 and it leaks worse than ever. I said, well, let me go up and look. I said, do you have a ladder? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'll go up there and look. I went up there and looked. Two things that they didn't do. They didn't flash around the chimney. There was from this amount of a gap to this amount of a gap, all the way around the chimney. The water was running straight down, and there was a couple of nails sticking up. Water was running down those nails. So I put the nails with a hammer down, put tar over them, put the flashing around her chimney, and I got this mesh that's made just for that, put tar over it, and I came down and I said, I don't think you have any more trouble with your roof leaking. She said, what'd you notice up there? And I told her. She said, that rascal charged me $600 and it leaked worse than ever. I said, because he didn't actually do anything to help the problem. I said, it's that way in life. If you got a small problem, you need to fix it right then. If he was a roofer, and I don't think he was, probably one of these guys came around and said, hey, I can fix your roof or anything you need done. And she mentioned to him she had a leaky roof. He went up there, and this is a widow woman now. Men that are unscrupulous and men that are lost and have no character, they'll take advantage of a widow woman. And so I fixed her roof. She said, "How much do I owe you, sir?" I said, "You don't owe me a thing." She said, "It's rained 2 or 3 times since you've been up there. I have not had one single drop of rain." She said, "By the way, do you like fish?" I said, "Has a bear got a tail?" She said, "You do like it." I said, "I love it." She said, "My son is a fisherman. He goes up Lake Erie and gets me all this fish. I can't eat all of it. It's fresh. It's in the freezer. You take it home?" I said, "Sure." So she gave me that for 2 or 3 weeks. She had enough fish there to feed the whole community. But it made us a good meal, didn't it, Flo? It was good. But because of laziness and idleness, verse 18 says, the house falls through. A feast is made for laughter. Wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Now, what he's talking about here, the gist of this is celebrations can bring temporal happiness, but you still have your problems, and money can solve those problems. So you can't just dance your way into eternal happiness. You can't just celebrate eternally to have perpetual happiness. There's got to be reality attached to your problems, and most of the problems we have, money can solve them. It's not talking about getting rich. It's talking about you having problems that celebrations won't solve, only money will. So feast is made for laughter. You laugh about it, have a good time, but it don't solve your problems. You still have the same problems. But now if you make enough money, you work and make enough money, you can take care of those problems. Verse 20, curse not the king. No, not in thy thoughts. Curse not the rich in thy bedchamber. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. He's saying don't vocalize your negative thoughts about anybody that's a ruler, because the birds of the air can catch that thought and carry it to them in their bedchamber. All he's just saying is loose lips sink ships. That's all he's saying. And in other words for it, my wife uses that all the time to our boys. And she'll say, now, remember, when they're telling her something, remember now those loose lips, they sink ships. And if you have negative thoughts, you voice them, vocalize them, then those thoughts could be carried by a bird, or somebody could overhear it is all it's saying, and they would relay that what you said. So don't vocalize negative thoughts about anybody that's in a place of leadership. Then he goes on in chapter 11. We're going to get down probably part of chapter 11 with the time that we have left. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. I used to wonder about that when I read that as a young Christian. I prayed about it, and I read it, and I reread it. It really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But the more I thought about it, and the more I prayed about it, the more the Holy Spirit gave me this answer. Bread is what we earn. That's how we make a living. That which we use for our living, money he's talking about. If we use it in a way that's unselfishly, we cast it upon the water of need. Waters many times means multitudes or masses of people. It always stands for multitudes. There's multitudes of people that need help, financial help. And he goes on to say in verse 2, give a portion to 7, also to 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. So we don't know what kind of catastrophe, we don't know what kind of hardship somebody has that has a need. We don't know in third world countries how many people go to bed at night hungry. I know of some that I witnessed that didn't have a job, their husband had left them or died, whichever one it was. Sometimes it was both. They didn't have money for food, and so they would send and ask if I could help them. Now, a 50-pound bag of rice would last, excuse me, last a mother with 2 children about a month. And so I would tell her, don't just get a 50-pound bag, get a 100-pound bag. Let it last you a little longer. I could afford to buy a 100-pound bag of rice. She couldn't. And so I said, when that runs out, you still need help, let me know. That's biblical to do that. God says to do that when you have it. If you have it, then help somebody that's in need. Help 7, that's the number of perfection, or 8. In other words, diversify. Put your money in missionaries. There's missionaries right now in Africa that need help. They're having a revolution in Africa, a revolutionary war, I should say, and the people are being killed. And we need to reach them with the gospel before it's too late. There's people in Afghanistan. There's people in Iran. There's people in Palestine that need missionaries that would take the truth of the gospel. And we need to help them. There's people in Ukraine that are dying. I'm glad I went over there a few years ago and I saw the situation. Of course, they weren't in war then, but I saw the situation. They don't have the food supplies that we have, and they don't have the availability of food. That they were part of Russia at one time. Russia wanted to keep them under their thumb, and they did not want that. And when Chernobyl exploded, you know about Chernobyl, right? They said they didn't want Chernobyl in their land, but Russia put it there. And when it exploded, a lot of people around that area, they either got killed or they had poisoned water. The water was never any good. And so they said, we don't want to be a part of Russia because Russia, they want to take advantage of us. They put our lives in danger, but they want to be safe. So we don't want to be a part of Russia. They still don't want to be a part of Russia. They'd rather die than be a part of Russia. Well, we got missionaries that are taking the gospel there. Paul Gray, I haven't heard from him for a year. I've called his church and they have not got in touch. They said they would. And I've called him. He had his phone number he gave me, and it always goes to voicemail. I've never had any word from him for over a year. I don't know if the guy's alive or dead. He's in a war zone. Chris Rue said he worked with him at times over the years, but he hadn't seen him for several months. And I was real impressed with Chris Rue. He's in Ukraine, winning people to the Lord, helping them every way he can help them, taking them bread, taking them soup, taking them Bibles. And he is risking his life to do that. There are people in this world that care more about souls than they do about money. That's what God's talking about. Give a portion of your money to 7 or 8. For thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth, because we don't know how long that door is going to be open. We don't know when that door will shut. Venezuelans, hundreds of thousands, I'm told, of them lost their life. We've had thousands of them who have lost their life in India. Hundreds that I know of in the Philippines when a typhoon hit some of these islands where these houses are nothing more than grass houses on wooden stilts, and they're swept out to sea. Many times the very inhabitants of that house are swept out to sea. We lived in a safe area. The Clark Air Base built this housing division, duplex. Some of them are duplexes, some of them are houses. They built that for their flyers, their Air Force personnel to live there. And then when they no longer lived there, then Nationals took it over and they rented it out. We rented one of those houses in the Philippines. It had a fence around the whole compound that we lived in, had guards that met you at the gate. You had to have a pass to get in. They knew who lived there and who didn't live there. And so they watched it because there was people, if they knew Americans lived there, that would try to steal what you had. So there were guards. Plus, we had a guard dog, and he was a good dog. He once in a while would get out. He was so strong, if he jerked real hard, and I had one of the thickest chains you could get, but he would break a link of it and get out. Whenever he would get out, the guards would knock on my window 2 or 3 in the morning. Sir, would you please get your dog? Your dog's out here and we're afraid. And I would tell Ralph, I said, Ralph, go get him back here. And I said, I'll fix that chain tomorrow. Just put him back up. He probably won't get out again tonight. And so I'm glad we had those dogs. We had been broken into before I got one. And they stole a lot of things that took me a long time to save up to get. For instance, electric typewriter. They stole it. They stole some silverware, some gifts I had for supporting churches. I don't know, wasn't anything of real value. They didn't know what they were doing because they went to our bedroom. My wife had the title to the car that I had over there in a bag, and they had thrown that bag upside down and scattered the contents, not knowing what was inside of it, looking for money. And we didn't keep a whole lot of money at home. But my wife said, man, I thought they got that title, but they said they just dumped it upside down. They didn't know what it was. They could have had our car. Yeah, they could have. I mean, it's been known to happen. But in these areas, there are people that are lost and that are hungry for the gospel. Although there's people in third world countries that all they know how to do to make a living is steal it from somebody else. That's why all these illegals that are over here, they try scam things that they perfected. They try robbery. They try rape. They try murder, because that's what they did in their country. And they came out of their country here under the present, not the present administration, but the previous administration before the present one. They were not vetted. They didn't find out where they came from or what their background was. As a result of that, we have a lot of scam artists, and they're everywhere. My wife asked me the other day, she said, did somebody contact you about this scam that's going around? I said, well, they did, but I ignored it. I didn't even answer it. Yeah, they told me something about it. I don't even pay attention. We probably get one of those a month. I thought it was a scam, but I didn't realize this. When I went to Corydon, Indiana. Now, if you ever go down Corydon on the main intersection, which is 71, and then you intersect with 65, there is a toll road, but there's no toll booths. I didn't go through no toll booths, but they evidently have cameras. They had a picture of my van. They had a picture of my license plate. They had a picture of me going, they said, to the toll area, but it wasn't marked as a toll area. I told my wife, I said, I don't remember seeing no toll area. Do you? She said, no. They said, but you owe us $5 and whatever, some cents, almost $6. And so I told my wife, I said, find out about that. Find out if that's a scam or what. And so she found out, went on the internet, went on her little laptop, and found out that they actually do have it. Have you run into that before?
I haven't run into that, but I knew that they were building a bridge there that would be a toll bridge.
Well, we didn't go across the bridge that I remember. No, I didn't. We just was on a major highway. All of a sudden, you're on 71, then you go into, I think it's 65. And 65 for a half hour goes into Corydon. Well, I don't even remember seeing a sign you're in a toll area. But I got that ticket, and I had her. I said, find out what it is. She said, yeah, whenever you reach that certain point there, it's a toll area. And so I said, well, let's just go ahead and pay it. I thought it was a scam. You don't know sometimes. I have had more than one call from the police department saying that I owe them money for a speeding ticket or a fine or something. Well, I know good and well I don't. So I just hang up on them. I don't even pay any attention. It's a scam usually. They want you to send them money. Oh, another one is they'll act like, if you're a grandparent and you have grandkids, they'll act like your kids are in jail and they need money to get out. That's another scam. They don't ever do that. They don't ever ask you on a telephone to give money because your kids are in jail. They don't do that. They'll come and inform you personally about it. They won't do that. So don't pay any attention. I mean, they got all kinds of ways of getting money out of seniors because seniors want to help. They want to believe everybody, but you can't believe everybody. Today, we got a bunch of hostile, illegal people trying to make a dollar any way they can make it. So he goes on to say in verse 3, if clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if the tree fall toward the south or toward the north, in the place where the tree falleth, there it shall be. Now, at first, I kind of laughed about that. I thought, what in the world, if a tree falls in the north or the south, that's where it's going to be. What he's saying is there's certain things in life that are fixed. Can't change it. Can't change the location of that tree. If it's a dead tree, the winds hit it, it's going to fall. The clouds, they empty themselves. This is a cycle of life upon the earth. You can't change that. We can't change that. God only is the one that can change it. And so he goes on to say here that I lost my place. Verse 4, he that observeth the wind shall not sow, he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Here is this farmer, he wants perfect weather. Weather is never perfect. It's going to be cloudy, it's going to be windy at times, there's going to be times there's a light rain. But you have to repair your fields in the late fall, and then you have to wait till winter is almost over, and when it starts warming up again, then you've got to turn and loosen that soil up so it will take the seed. You also have to put fertilizer down. We had animals that produced natural fertilizer. So we had that fertilizer at the end of winter. We had to shovel on a manure spreader, and then you had to ride on that manure spreader and fork that manure out because it only would take it out on a belt so far. Well, you had manure all over your hair, face. It was hard to get the smell of that off of you. But if you lived on a farm, you knew you had to do it. I hated it. My dad hated it. My brother hated it. But it was part of life, part of getting the fields ready. If you was raised on a farm, you knew that was just part of life. You had to do it. And there's things in life that are distasteful. There are things in life that are unpleasant, but God has arranged it in a cycle of life. And that's how it is. He goes on to say, verse 5, as thou knowest not what is in the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. That is a mystery, how a baby, its bones can grow in the womb of its mother without ever injuring the mother. And that baby comes out and it's perfectly healthy and it has sound bones that then begin to get stronger and stronger as the baby progresses. But that's a mystery. Only God knows how he could ever allow that to happen. How that a woman could have a baby that has bones in its body that are growing. It's not hurting the mother and it's not hurting the child. Those bones are soft until that baby evidently is born, and then the bones begin to get stronger and stronger as the baby begins to exercise. But it's a mystery, and that's what he goes on to say, even so thou knowest not the works of God. So the work of God is as mysterious as a baby that grows in the womb of its mother. Have you ever thought about a baby and how those little babies come out healthy? They have to be spanked in order to breathe, usually, and they come out crying and helpless, and we go back the way we came, helpless, as we get a certain age, and we begin to have the same things happen to us that happened when we were born. It's the mystery of God why he wants those things to take place. Farmers who wait for perfect weather will never prepare their fields for sowing crops. They will never reap the harvest if they wait for perfect weather. My dad would tell us, boys, we got to get up. We got to get that corn in. Now, how we got it in was by hand. 10 acres of corn by hand. 12 acres of hay by hand. Pitchforks. My dad would rake it up, let it dry. Then he'd go along with a wagon pulled by a horse. And then we would put it on the wagon and then get it to the barn, take it off the wagon, put it up in the hay mound, pitch it by hand. And you got to be pretty strong by doing that. But if you waited for perfect weather, you'd never get your work done. It'd never get done because weather was not always perfect. Sometimes it was a light rain. Sometimes it was a light wind. Sometimes it was cold. Oh, I hated shucking corn when it was cold. Your hands would be so cold as you'd shuck that corn. Wagon would go between two rows. One of you would be on one side of the wagon, one on the other. You would take usually 5 or 6 ears of corn on a stalk. You would take it and shuck it on the stalk and then take that off of the corn and put it on the wagon with a shuck that would reveal the corn. But because it was cold, that corn would make your fingers bleed. And it took a while before your fingers got built up to it. But that's what we did. And it was always a good thing when you watched your horses and your cattle eat good in the wintertime from corn that you picked with your hands. And I used to say, I hope you enjoy that, buddy, because that came with some blood on it. My blood. And they would chomp on that corn just like a coon in a cornfield. Now, coons love to climb up a stalk of corn and get what they can of the stalks. If they can't cause it to bend over to the ground, they'll just eat on it while it's on the stalk. When it's real cold, that stalk will stand up straight. Now, when it's not so cold, it'll bend over. And raccoons love corn. Other animals do, but raccoons really do. We have responsibility to keep showing God's word, verse 6 says. In the morning sow thy seed, in the evening withhold not thy hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper, either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. So our responsibility is to keep witnessing, keep sharing the word of God, keep showing the word of God, because we don't know what will prosper and what won't prosper. I have given out tracts to people and thought later that it was a waste of time. Find out, though, later it wasn't a waste of time. Those very people attended church. You don't know when you give out a tract. You don't know when you go door to door, knocking on doors, telling people, we've got a church that teaches the Bible. We got a church that loves people. We'd like for you to be a part of it. You don't ever know what the outcome of that will be. It could be that that person comes and gets saved. I was watching today, as I do a lot of times. I want to get a break from reading and studying. And so I look in the kitchen window, see if any activity's back there, look out in front, while all the while praying about the message and praying about visitors coming. And I noticed that they had that, I was telling my wife, they had that movie theater. The parking lot was full again. So evidently they had a movie. And there was people coming up from the hill where Tafari and Jill lives. I mean, several of them, 5 or 6 of them. And they walked up the hill and went into that movie theater. And I thought to myself, now they can walk up that hill in the cold and go see a movie, but they can't walk up the hill and come to church. And that takes the same amount of effort. And they would get more if they came here than they would in that movie. But that's what they do. I saw people walking up and down as cold as it is on both sides of the street again today. And there's hardly any sidewalk in some places. So they walk on top of the snow, slip and slide. And I don't know what they're looking for, but they're looking up and down for something. And I don't think they even know what they're looking for. But they're looking for something. And I wish the Lord would lead them here, those that are serious about knowing the truth of the gospel. But we have a responsibility to the lost. He goes on to say in verse 7, truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. Now, he's not talking about just sunshine. He's talking about the light of the world. It's pleasant to those that do not know the Lord. And it's very satisfying and rewarding to those who get saved. To hear the gospel is pleasant enough. But for people to be led out of darkness into light, that is altogether pleasant. For somebody that knows what kind of life they used to live, and God brings them out of that darkness, how satisfying is that? We ought to be able to schedule a meal with a neighbor or a family member or a friend and share the gospel with them. The times my wife and I have done that, and it's not all the time, but we do it sometimes. The times that we've done that always resulted in somebody making a profession of faith. I would do it in the Philippines. We would have a meal, invite people over, usually that didn't know the Lord, and I would share the gospel with them. And some of those would get saved and come back to church. But there's people that will not attend church unless the gospel is implanted in their hearts and minds. And the only way you can do that sometimes is just have them unsuspectingly, in a nice low-key way, have them share a meal with you, and while they're eating or after the meal's over, just share the gospel with them and let them know it's your decision. This house belongs to the Lord. We've dedicated this meal and everything we have to the Lord. And it'd be okay if I just share a few things from the Bible with you. And most people will always say, yes, it's okay. And you go ahead and share some things from the Bible. Now, this study of Romans is a good book that not only tells us our responsibility, but simplifies the gospel message so we can be witnesses, effective witnesses of the gospel. So I think you're going to like more and more that you get in and become acquainted with the book of Romans. It's a beautiful book, and it's a book that will help us to be able to witness to people effectively. We are to live joyfully in our youth and to let our hearts lead us in the right direction. He says in verse 8, and I'm going to close with this verse, if a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity. In other words, all that comes from us living our days in darkness is meaningless. And it doesn't have any meaning because we remember those days of how sorrowful we were, how unhappy we were. And we remember now the days that we live under the gospel, how happy we are in Jesus. That's all he's saying. And I'm going to close right here. We'll pick this up next time. So let me remember, if I happen to forget, to start again in verse 8 and 9. We've only got a chapter and a little over a chapter and a half left. And I love this chapter in this book of Ecclesiastes. If you're there tonight and you're studying with us, and you say, I don't get those things that you get, but I see it when you bring them out. It's the reason there's been many hours spent in study and prayer. That's why I'm not building myself up. I'm just saying you could get the same thing if you spend as many hours in study and prayer as what I do and other preachers do. And that's the only way you're going to learn some things. Precept upon precept. That's what God says. Line upon line. Here a little, there a little. That's how the understanding comes. That's how your understanding will also come as you study with us these books of the Bible. Okay, get your prayer list out because we're going to have a couple of us pray tonight, then we're going to leave. So the ones that we have not added that I mentioned this morning are Deb McKinley, and she has evidently some kind of sickness. I thought at first that when I first got that she had hit her head, but she got ill on that cruise ship and was put in intensive care because of some illness. So We also need to pray for Tafari's mom. For Ebby Finn, she really needs prayer. For Kathy Doyle, Flo has a couple unspoken. By the way, Flo's also going to get a consultation on Thursday about whether or not she will be able to have that hernia operated on. Then I understand that Brother Stan is going. Is it tomorrow you're going? To the heart doctor. So let's pray for Brother Stan. He's going tomorrow to the heart doctor. Make sure that we keep him in prayer about that. Had they told you what? They're just giving you a preliminary checkup.
My valves are all, I think, 40 to 60% clogged.
Okay.
My heart's beating in good and pumping out too slow.
But not too slow.